Welcome to Screen Quest, a podcast where a fellowship of film lovers and armchair movie experts plays film roulette and sometimes watches movies about Russian roulette. I'm one of your hosts, Chris Waterman from Jacksonville, Florida, joined as always by May Finch, also from Jacksonville,
Hi, everyone.
and Will Rotondi, joining us from Greenville, South Carolina.
What?
How's everyone doing?
I am here.
I was just thinking it's ironic that I didn't make the flub of Russian roulette, like watching this film for our main quest today, which is Deer Hunter. Somehow that sneaked into my brain completely apropos of nothing when I made that flub. But anyway, on today's episode we will be talking about the Deer Hunter. Our prompt was Fade to Black, which I realized in the edit that I did not explain what it was, but essentially is us discussing a final scene in a film that has a lasting impact. But first, we are going to do a little catching up on what we've been watching, because I know we've all been watching a little bit here and there of both movies and TV. So May, I will start with you. What have you been watching?
Okay, so it's been a couple of weeks for me. So I've actually mostly been playing video games, not watching a ton. And I was racking my brain to think, what have I watched? And I realized I got into the very niche genre of like short films, as in like 10-minute long films, that are Animal Crossing shorts. There is a channel on YouTube that will tell short stories through the format of like Animal Crossing.
That's
Nice.
very cool. Yeah.
It's great. Would highly recommend their time traveling designer short. It's very funny, especially if you've ever played the game, because it's like some meta commentary on how certain people play the game. But yeah, the channel that does it is Densely, Densle. Would recommend if you're looking for something lighthearted to watch for 10 minutes, which was my mood this week.
Excellent. Yeah, the only thing I've seen similar to that was our lovely friends over at RKG Video, who we sometimes steal keyword countdown from, had an Animal Crossing mystery that they designed for one of the members of the channel to play over the pandemic. So they went fully remote, like everybody with their like job of like content creation. So they would do these streams, and so I think Gav invited Rory onto his island, and like there's like a body that's like on the shore. I don't know how they pulled off half the stuff they did in the game, but it's quite the hour-long adventure. It's very fun and funny.
That's amazing. I mean, I would be impressed if they pulled it off without mods, but maybe.
Yeah, I think they did. I mean, again, I don't know much about Animal Crossing, so yeah, like what the limitations are, but it looked to be all stuff that you could do like or get in the game, but it was pretty impressive.
I need to check that out.
Yes, it's called, I think, an Animal Crossing Burger Mystery. I think it's the name of the maybe I'll link it in the edit of this video, but very cool. Yes, how about you, Will? What have you been watching?
A lot. And we talked a little bit before we started up the pod, that I have been like finishing off a bunch of television series that I've been getting into lately. So whether it was wrapping up Obi-Wan, starting and then subsequently wrapping up very shortly Stranger Things, and then finally wrapping up Strange New Worlds, which is amazing. So that was a lot of fun. Kind of started into FX's new series, The Old Man, with Jeff Bridges, because that looked interesting. So kind of want to see where that goes. And for Independence Day, I couldn't miss the opportunity to go back and watch the classic ID for Will Smith, Jeff Goldblum, Bill Pullman masterpiece that came out in my childhood. So Independence Day, the film, was and still is amazing, and I will always watch it every year. So
it is a lot of fun. I have very fond memories of seeing that in the movie theaters. Only a couple years after, like maybe 3 years after Jurassic Park. So it was like where CGI effects were kind of starting to hit their stride, and that was just so like the especially like the dogfighting like scenes and things like that were just really epically cool.
Yep, that and like how they designed like the explosions to just wipe out entire cities. Part of it sort of even felt like a little Terminator-esque, like when we saw like the nuclear explosion in T2, kind of felt like that watching again for Independence Day. So that was a lot of fun to watch that too and compare.
Awesome, man. Yeah, it's been a while since I've watched that. I should probably maybe at some point, maybe next 4th of July, if nothing else, like pop it on. Usually our fourth movie is Jaws, just because like it's one of my favorites ever. But ID4 is also a good choice. Yeah, so we also wrapped up Stranger Things and Obi-Wan. Barry is the other show that we finally like caught up, like watched the final few episodes, and that was quite the ride once it got started. I was a little disappointed with the first half of the season. It felt not as Barry-esque as I wanted, and then like it like hits the gas the last few episodes and ends on a pretty wild cliffhanger. So
Is that the Bill Hader show?
it is. Yep.
Okay.
It is sort of a dark comedy about a hitman who basically is a vet from like the Iraq War. Maybe it was Afghanistan, but he's got like sort of a little bit of PTSD for sure, and like that constant yearning to like do something and you know feel the adrenaline of being in battle, and so he harnesses that into being a hitman. And kind of where the comedy element comes in is he moves out to California and decides he wants to maybe leave that life behind and become an actor. And he's taking a class taught by Henry Winkler. And it's just it's really, really good. Like it has shocking like moments, but it's also very, very funny, depending on your sense of humor, I guess. But I would categorize it as dark comedy. And he's just phenomenal in it. I mean, Bill Hader is just he's a wonderful actor. Just he can do it all. All right, well, let us draw a side quest. Let's see what Lady Luck has in store for us. Give us a little shuffle, and we have an immersive experience. So the immersive experience, to remind our listeners, is basically choose a film world in which you would want to live in, basically. So if you had to live the rest of your life as a character in a movie you've seen, what would you pick and why? Last time I believe we had Star Trek, speaking of, was the choice that we picked.
Diana Troy, all the way.
Yeah, absolutely. You know what? I got one. I'm gonna say living as a hobbit in the Shire seems like it would be the shit. Like the little idyllic world. They have several meals a day. They're sipping on their home brews, smoking pipe weed, really just like chilling, doing some farming, super peaceful, like no scandals. Looks like a great place to live, honestly. So that's what I'm gonna say. I know that's probably kind of a cop out answer, but yeah, every time I see the opening of Fellowship of the Ring, I'm like, man, this looks awesome.
I think that's great. Although it does beg the question, what would you do if your old wizard friend knocked on the door and said he had an adventure for you?
Yeah, I guess it depends on like what kind of hobbit you are, right? Like, are you like, because most of them aren't adventurous, but you know, there's exceptions. Me personally, like I think it would depend on the quest. If it was like go steal a bunch of gold from the dragon, I'd probably be like, nah, I'm good. I'm gonna keep smoking this pipe weed and sipping on the ale. Thank you very much. If it was like, well, the world depends on you doing this thing, I'd probably like wouldn't like it, but would accept the quest.
So you're Frodo.
Yeah, yeah, probably more so. I fancy myself more of a Sam. I think Frodo is the kind of a little whiny, like useless character, especially in the film. Sam is where it's at. Samwise Gamgee.
Nice.
And I've been to like the Hobbits and set New Zealand too, and can confirm it's just as like epic and amazing as it looks in the films. Would you guys want to live in the Shire?
Oh, definitely.
Heck yeah. I would live in a
I'd
hobbit
be
hole.
stealing fireworks and causing mayhem.
Yeah, absolutely. Like I wonder, like, do hobbits do anything else besides farm, or is that pretty much like? I mean, I know some of them like run like taverns and things like that, but this seems to be primarily that they're like farmers, right? Like that's where most of them operate. Like
I'm no
Unfortunately, my oh, sorry, go ahead.
I think you were about to say the same thing, which is I'm no Tolkien expert. I read the books ages ago, but I would think that it's like farming is probably what they like export, and everything
Mhm.
else is just kind of trying to keep the village going. So like I imagine they have seamstresses and butchers and things like that. But yeah, I think it's probably mostly farming.
So what would your job be if you were a hobbit then?
Seamstress, of course.
Yeah.
I already do that.
Amazing. Okay. Yeah. Well, it's a fantasy. Yes. I figured like, if you could do anything, like
Okay,
maybe.
maybe more of a bard role, like,
Yeah. There you go.
entertaining and
I
telling
was like, come
stories.
on. It's like you also play music. So yeah, there you go. How about you, Will? What would your job be in the land of Hobbiton if you
Oh my gosh. I would love to brew beer. That would be it. No,
yeah, I
I
would.
think generally just like a low key, well, all of it would be low key. They don't do it. Well, I guess farming is technically labor intensive, but they don't seem to be terribly like energetic. So I don't know how intensive the farming would be if so many of them are also doing it. So I don't know. Logically speaking, probably the beer route if I could do that. But music is also definitely entertaining and something you can do as well. So maybe they'll double it up, do a couple of things, specialize in a couple areas.
Guys, let's form a Hobbit band.
Oh yeah.
Absolutely. What would the name of a Hobbit band be?
Oh,
Hmm. Yeah, we'll have to think on that and come back to it. Yeah,
Second
I think
something.
the what?
Second
Which is
something.
second something. Yeah, I mean, second breakfast is an awesome name for
Right?
yeah. I think owning a like a tavern slash playhouse would be the shit. Like a little place where you could like put on performances, like but also like serve some food and some drink.
mhm.
It seems like a place hobbits would get down with. Well, very cool. See, I said nothing was coming to my mind, and there we go. It's like, this is like an obvious one, but
Great
would
answer.
be cool nonetheless. All right, well, let's go from the happy land of hobbits to the dark corners of Pennsylvania and Vietnam, because last week we drew the Deer Hunter for our film for Fade to Black. I do want to make a quick correction. So I hadn't seen this since high school, and so at the end of last week's episode, I would have swore or bet like $100 that like the final scene of that film was the one shot like roulette scene at the end. It turns out that's not the case. So I like when I nominated this, just did it on false memory, but I kind of like what the actual final scene is even better. It's obviously not as like shocking of a thing, but there's my little correction, and we'll get into it. But I think the actual final scene's more interesting in a lot of ways. So yeah, let's do some quick plot summary of the Deer Hunter. So this film was released in 1978, December of 1978. It stars Robert De Niro, Christopher Walken, John Cazale, and Meryl Streep are probably the most recognizable actors and actresses in the film. It centers around a group of friends. They are, if I'm not mistaken, kind of like nondescript Slavic Americans. Like they don't really say the country they're from, right? Like that's kind of the impression I got from watching the movie. I tried to hone in on that, but who decide to volunteer to go fight in Vietnam. I think, and I know that at least the De Niro character seems to kind of view it as like an adventure. There's a great little moment where he bumps into a vet in the bar and is kind of boasting, and seems very interested in getting over there to pay his patriotic duty. What happens is they're captured and imprisoned and forced to play Russian roulette for the entertainment of their Vietnamese captors. Which leads to the death of some of their squad mates. And then even though the three friends all make it out alive, they're all changed in some profound way or another. From there, really, like, the film focuses on the effects of that sequence and how the characters are dealing with it in their own ways. Robert De Niro has difficulty readjusting into or reintegrating into civilian life. Christopher Walken goes AWOL when we find out later it's to become a professional Russian roulette player. And then the final friend, who I'm blanking on his name, so I'm going to pop this. Stevie, thank you. Is you find out, has lost both of his legs in the escape from the prison, and is living in the VA hospital, currently separated from his wife, and really just seems like afraid to go back and to try to be any kind of husband or family member. The film climax occurs when De Niro discovers what Christopher Walken's been up to. Nick is back in Vietnam, sending money back from his winnings playing Russian roulette. He goes back to attempt to bring him back to the States, and is shocked to find that he doesn't really recognize. Nick doesn't recognize the De Niro character. And again, I should had all this up. Mike at all. And they basically square off in a game of Russian roulette, because De Niro thinks that maybe if he sits down and takes the place of the opponent, that it'll kind of shock Nick back into maybe going home with him, and he can save him. In the final moment, before he pulls the trigger, Nick does recognize Robert De Niro, or at least to some extent. Says one shot, which is a sort of thing that happens earlier in the movie. It's a rule that De Niro's character Mike has about hunting deer, where one shot is all you get. Nick says this, pulls the trigger, and he tragically dies. Mike help us to save him. The film closes, as I found out, with basically a short sequence of a funeral for Nick, as well as everyone gathering back at the town bar, and they all basically sing God Bless America, Fade to Black. I think that covers most of it, right? I'm doing that kind of off the cuff. So we'll start with general impressions, and we'll go from there. So I'm going to switch it up this week. I want to start with your general impressions. This is your first time seeing the film. What did you make of it, first of all?
So I actually, I guess I'm trying to feel like, or try to figure out how to explain this. So I didn't really like the film.
No.
Which is, just to apologize up front about that.
It's okay.
Just wasn't really my cup of tea, even in terms of like war films or like PTSD. Now, granted, when the film came out, I mean, this stuff may not have been as talked about back then, obviously, or just based on the I guess the feelings about going to Vietnam at the time, because this was one of the first ones that actually tackled that, and
it was the first, like, yeah,
the first one. Okay,
the antithesis to a film like The Green Berets, which was like meant to inspire and show off war as like this necessary, like, heroic thing. And the story goes that the Academy Awards, when this won Best Picture, John Wayne had to deliver the statuette and announce the winner, and was furious because he was, we'll just say, against like the message of the movie and subsequent movies that kind of tried to showcase like the horrors of war and the consequences. So, but yes, continue. It was the first of that kind of era, that where Apocalypse Now and other stuff kind of followed.
Well, in that case, that changes my opinion slightly on it. Because anytime that somebody tries to do something that bucks the general attitude of anything, I think you deserve credit for standing up and trying to tell a different side of things. So for that, then I would say The Deer Hunter definitely has that. It should always have that respect for that. And also, just to anybody who is listening to this and also thinks my opinion is full of shit, the audience score and general critical score for this film are both substantially high. So do not let me deter you from watching this movie. I just remember watching it and feeling like it was very long. I didn't really enjoy most of the characters, and the few that were there, I don't know, I couldn't really get behind the characters to begin with, and I think that was probably where I struggled the most with feeling any sort of like connection to them or necessarily caring what happened. Now, don't get me wrong, I don't want anybody to go through like the horror of war and end up like that. So that's not what I mean with that either. It was more just they seemed like a bunch of unhappy people that got stuck in a really crappy situation and then got even more just unhappy after that because of what they had to go through. And so it just I didn't really understand, besides the commentary on war and the commentary on what it does to people that come back that had to go through something so horrific like that. I think that was mostly just where it didn't really connect for me though, beyond that part.
Hey, listen, man, not everything is for everybody. Like I one of the things I can't stand is like if somebody offers an opinion that's like contrarian, or they don't like something, and then somebody comes at them and it's like, oh, you're wrong, or like, you know, dude, it's totally fine. Like, please never apologize for having an opinion on the show about something. Like diversity of thought is one of the many reasons I wanted to do this, because I figured there would be, you know, a lot of different opinions on the different movies we're going to watch. So that's fine. And you're not alone. Like I remember the first time I saw this film, I thought it was overly long. I still think it's a little overly long, particularly in the front end of it. I think most of the interesting stuff kind of happens like after like the middle section, which is, you know, probably the shortest like bit. The only thing I have to offer kind of to kind of piggyback on what you were saying as far as like or to comment on what you're saying is the town where my dad is from in Pennsylvania is very similar like to this one. So there's like an authenticity, and what you say is like it is true. Like it's one of those things anytime we go to visit, like I love seeing my family and stuff up there, but there is sort of like this weird sinister undertone to that town where like the people that are there like don't seem particularly happy. It's a very small industrial kind of town, and I think there's an authenticity there that like it's not really pretty to look at as far as like these characters, but I think it's an astute observation. You root for them because like it's more out of like human decency than like actually you know, like wanting the character to go. So I think that's all fair so far. May, how about you? Oh, sorry, go ahead.
Yeah. I was just going to say, as a more upbeat note, the beautiful shots of being out in nature, I loved that. And also when they left John behind for a hot minute and tricked him to go take a whiz and then drove off in the car was pretty awesome. So I'll leave it with that.
Yeah, it is ironically enough, like they like this, like the shot that's behind you, like that's in Washington State. I guess like Pennsylvania wasn't like epic enough, so like all the deer hunting stuff was in Washington State and not Pennsylvania, even though it's supposed to be set there. Because that's the first thing Marianne and I said. We're like, that's not fucking Pennsylvania, dude. Like, I've been all over Pennsylvania. There's nothing there. Then we looked it up, and I was like, oh yeah, it's Washington State. That's why. Man, I digress. But yeah, May, please, I'd love to hear what your thoughts are as well.
Yeah, so I agree with Will on a lot, both with regards to the enjoyable qualities of the film and the beautiful like setting when they were actually like out hunting and how kind of idyllic it was. I really had trouble getting into the movie until I was already over an hour in. I don't want to make this comparison because I feel like I would be insulting your favorite movie, Chris, but it was rather Godfather-like in that like long intro wedding that like definitely like gave you a lot of interesting context about the characters. But like for what I got out of that, it seemed like it could have been maybe like 15 minutes, not an hour.
Yeah.
So yeah, it was just kind of long for me. But after that, I thought everything was great. I think the word authentic is a really good word for this movie, because it felt very real and raw, and while not particularly enjoyable to watch, it was the realness that did eventually like captivate me, especially with I guess the start of that first hunting trip, because there had been like, I don't know, a bit of antagonism and tension between a lot of the guys at the wedding, especially with regards to like there are women and a bit of jealousy there. Like I was holding my breath the entire first hunting trip because I was convinced that someone was going to like shoot someone else either accidentally or because they got angry or something like that. And I felt like I was kind of locked in that suspense, both in the scenes at home in Pennsylvania and over in Vietnam, of course. Just because I felt like the threat of violence was always looming in an interesting way that I feel definitely worked with the overall I guess like film mechanic of it being a game of Russian roulette. Like I think that's there's the literal Russian roulette, and I think there's also kind of a metaphorical roulette that's happening throughout the whole film. So I like that part. It just in my in my Venn diagram of films I like, it's enjoyable films and films that I think like do what they set out to do really well. And I would put this strongly in the films that set out to do what they want to do well category, even if it wasn't enjoyable for me.
Yeah, it's no mistake that like it's been since high school since I've like watched this. It's not particularly pleasant. It's a tough topic, in general. But I just, in terms of like war movies, there's something about this one that there's an intense melancholy that I feel for probably like a solid week, like after like, both times after I watched this. And it's not to say like something like Saving Private Ryan, like I don't feel that kind of melancholy, but like I can watch that like once a year and I enjoy it. Like it doesn't have the same effect. It's not like it's any less harrowing. It's just different, I guess. Something about the way that like the subject matter is handled. Totally agree again with like the length being particularly long in the front end. I had that feeling on first watch, still had that feeling here. I think I was willing to like forgive it a little bit. The biggest shock that I had the first time though was like how little war there is in this movie that was like a war film. Like I was expecting this to be something like a Platoon or Apocalypse Now, and it's not that like at all. It is very much about like the people and like the town and sort of showing you like on the bookends of like what happens like on either side of like Vietnam, right? Like as a conflict and these people going there. And I think that's like one of the things that like I struggle with like when I tell people like if they're like thinking about watching it, like on the one hand like I'm like, well, I want you to temper your expectations because like this is not like going to be anything like Platoon or Apocalypse Now. On the other hand, it's like I like people to go into stuff and enjoy it like purely. So yeah, I really enjoyed the second watch. I think like as far as acting goes, like that's probably one of the strongest qualities like of this film. I think there's just so many memorable performances. It's incredible stuff, even if it is unpleasant to look at, like just how amazing everybody is in the film. Even like the town characters that you again see kind of in the front and the back side of the movie, I think are great. And some of them I think were amateur actors, and they do a really good job selling themselves as like this Pennsylvania small Pennsylvania town person. John Cazale too, his last movie, got to give a shout out to that. Like he was very sick with lung cancer, and it's like it's so apparent. Like I like didn't notice the first time around, but like some of the scenes he doesn't look well at all. But I guess it's what he wanted to do like all the way to the end of his life. And I think like really good performance too. He's great at playing pathetic, like you think of like Fredo and then this character, and if you ever watch Dog Day Afternoon, like his character is quite pathetic there too. Like he does like kind of the puppy eyes like better than just about anybody. So
yeah, I never learned his character's name in this film. I just kept thinking Fredo.
Yeah, I mean, it's really easy to like if once you've seen the first two Godfather movies, like he can't really be anybody else. So his character name is Stan.
Stan, yeah.
Yeah, so cool. Well, let's I mean, primarily our objective here is to talk about the final sequence, which again established at the top of the show I had completely wrong. I remember it being like the one shot boom, De Niro crying, and then cutting to like the credits. Like I don't know why my brain filtered out everything that came after. Maybe shock, I guess, the first time, but I kind of like where this ended more, like as far as like a discussion point, because I think it is such a powerful scene. So as we kind of established, they're at this funeral, and then they roll right to the bar, and everyone's very quiet, and they end by singing "God Bless America." So what did you guys make of the ending?
There's a palpable awkwardness between Linda and Michael. That I found like very, very heart-wrenching and also touching, just because like it's everything with Nick has been very hard for both of them. And they also like are very clearly like love and care about each other a lot. And I think that there is this tension that even though Nick is dead now, is going to like continue between them, where it's like they love and care about each other, but they've also both experienced this horrible loss that they both feel kind of guilty about for not maybe, doing as much as they could or not being there at the right times, even though it seemed like, what was going to happen to Nick was just going to happen.
Yeah, it's a kind of a weird like survivor guilt in a way that like both of them have. And it's, I mean, it's doubly tragic, I think, for both of those characters in particular, because like De Niro like gets him out of the camp and then goes and fails the second time, and for her to kind of have the hope of like, hey, he's alive after being crushed once and like assuming that he's like, probably like dead somewhere, and then like to have to kind of endure that loss like a second time is like, yeah, it's rough. Yeah, how about you, Will?
I thought the song was a really weird choice.
Yeah,
It
let's
just
talk
seemed
about that.
so out of place to me. And I thought, who at a funeral is going to sing that? I mean, and I guess to some extent it was sort of reestablishing, like, we're not trying to completely bash America for what we did, and be hypercritical of that, trying not to be too one way or the other, trying to be more just demonstrating what the horror was that people went through. But if this was the first movie to be that critical about the war, then probably put in there as sort of a way to kind of step back and not say that, we're not anti-war for what we chose to do. We're just saying that maybe this could have been handled differently, or this is what this led to. And so kind of reestablishing, like, God bless America, and we're glad to be part of the U.S., but also, let's all remember our buddy who died because of everything that happened. So or at least that's
Interesting,
what
like,
I kind of, sorry, go
yeah.
ahead.
So you no. So you interpret it basically as like they're like, hey, like we're not like anti-USA, like trying to be reassuring. That's basically what you.
It sort of felt like it was trying to be like an uplifting sort of turn to the end. Like, we're not completely trying to turn our backs on our country with that, like what happened. We're not trying to be anti-USA, but we're also just really, I don't know. It just seems so weird. I wasn't really sure what else it could have been beyond that. Like, they're just, that's just the tune that came to mind that was soothing to try and say. And then it was just like, well, he's doing it. I think I'm just going to, because we're all feeling the same feelings about the loss of our friends. So yeah.
It's
I
so
I
it's so
saw it
funny.
as I saw it
Oh,
as
go ahead.
dripping in irony
Yes,
personally.
me too. Thank
Yeah.
you.
Yeah.
Okay, I was
Yeah.
like,
Just
yeah.
because like both for the characters that actually went to Vietnam and for those that, had to kind of hold down the fort and just go on with life, not knowing if their loved ones were alive or not or what was going on. They all must be feeling pretty terrible and cynical about the country and their goal slash mission and all of that. And to me, it felt like an ironic move. I do think it's weird in that it's not super realistic. I think, but given this film seemed to be, wanting to be very real and authentic about the horrors of war, but also kind of anti-war propaganda, I think it's a purposeful, ironic choice.
Mm.
That's exactly, you nailed exactly like how I felt about it. Was like, and I think that's why I was kind of so excited to see that scene and be like, oh, this is the actual ending, because I do think it is it's a really nice kind of like final nail in the coffin of like, hey, in case like you haven't like understood up to this point, like what the film's trying, like, kind of not message per se, but like what how it's affected these people, sadly singing God Bless America around like the table where like everybody is like irrevocably changed and like traumatized in some way, like even the people that didn't go to the war is like, it's such a heartbreaking like weird thing. And it is weird. Well, like I agree, and May, like I think like you're correct in that it has like this like really strange like quality. Like it's a little off-putting where you're like, huh, like why that? But I think it's one of those things that's like you're meant to probably believe that like the characters are trying to muster up some like patriotism, but there's no heart in any of like, you know what I mean? Like
And if not patriotism, at least justification for their loss, because like that's the thing I've seen in like some people I know who are like families of veterans and such, is like there's this idea that if you aren't like grateful or appreciative of like the US and America, it's kind of like, well, then what was the point of me or my loved one, like, you know, going and fighting in these horrible circumstances and, you know, losing parts of themselves or their lives. And I think that's kind of a reflection of that sentiment.
yeah, definitely. I think one of the things like the film probably doesn't do as good of a job at showing, and I'm sure it's, you know, because like this was like things were like winding down, or you know, had wound down very recently, is sort of the treatment of like vets like after like the Vietnam War was pretty terrible, and it's many parts of the country, um you know, which I think may have been a bit too much for the film. So they kind of take the road of like everybody in the town celebrates them as, you know, heroes, like local town heroes, and really wants to kind of, you know, not only be respectful but like reverent towards them. And I think it would have been a little bit tougher if they'd come back and people were spitting on, you know, Michael, and yeah, that might have been a bit too much, but yeah. Anyway.
Ironically, I know someone when I was watching the film, who has worked in a VA hospital and was like, oh, the VA hospital in the film looks nicer than the one that we have today.
Yeah, it's probably
Oof.
like the same era equipment and stuff, like, or it's been
Yeah.
that long since it's been renovated. Like, I mean, honestly, like, depending on, I mean, I've been to several because like I've got a lot of family members that are veterans that you know, have used those benefits, but some of them are quite nice, like the one in Charleston, where my grandfather you know, spent his final months, was really nice, but it was also like I think recently renovated or something like that. So but yeah, those scenes were always like uh, a little bit tough, like to see all the different vets that are kind of there like together, you know what I mean? And just the lack of any kind of desire to go back to the home life, whether it's Michael or Steve, is that his name? Stevie.
Yeah.
Yeah, like um it's one of those things that's kind of impossible to like fathom. And then like at the end, so kind of like tying it back like to the end, like seeing them all around the table, and it's like sort of this reunion, it doesn't bring any comfort, or at least like I didn't get any comfort from it. It's like everyone's kind of just trying to force themselves to move on with their lives, but it doesn't, there's not a lot of kinship that I felt really between anybody except for maybe De Niro and Meryl Streep. But yeah.
I do have a question, because
Sure.
this beyond the singing at the end, this is my kind of point of confusion. Did you really understand why like Michael goes streaking after the wedding?
I always just kind of took that as like he's really fucked up, like in drunk, and like it's just I don't know, something people do sometimes, get naked. I mean
I mean, no shame whatsoever, but it seems like there is something like deeper going on with him, and
oh yeah.
I didn't get a great sense of what that was. I thought maybe it was just him being kind of apprehensive of going off to war, even though in some scenes he seems kind of excited to go off to war. But I was just kind of confused.
Yeah, I don't know. Like I hadn't really considered it past just like I won't call anybody out by name, but in college I had certain friends that were known to disrobe after a certain amount of alcohol pretty regularly. So maybe it was that, but maybe I don't know, maybe there
Maybe,
is
I
like
don't know, the other
something there.
characters were acting like it was odd or unusual for him to do
Yeah,
so.
especially he's like laying on his back. I was like, do you gotta lay on your back and do that, man? Um Yeah, I don't know. Like maybe the sequence in the reception like through him where like the guy doesn't want to engage like the vet that's there. And I think it's kind of brilliant like foreshadowing like having that like where they're wanting him to engage with them like really at all, and certainly like to tell them a bit about what's waiting for him. And I don't think he says a word, right? The vet like does not
Yeah.
talk that entire, he's clearly haunted, and that is sort of what becomes of everyone that like survives to the end of the movie.
I think he does say one thing and it's like fucked or something like that. Like,
Yeah, that's right. No, you're
yeah.
right.
It is also right after he has kind of a like almost something with Linda, so maybe he's just trying to cope with those feelings. I don't know, but it was interesting that the one character who seemed to be kind of having a rough time before the war ended up handling it, I guess, kind of the best mentally, at least.
Yeah, considering especially like because I think
Yeah.
like he's the one that probably goes through like the most of all of them, like, or has to deal with like most directly with a lot of the stuff. Like um they also kind of show him to be like a planner, right? And like he seems to be what's the word I'm looking for? Like the most meticulous, grounded, out of like the group, right? Like just like the way that he hunts, the way that he lives his life. He seems to be the most prepared, and like I think it's implied, right, that he's like special forces, like in the Vietnam like section when they stumble across him, like he's separate from
Mm,
the rest of what the men are. Like they're kind of like grunts, and he's
I hadn't picked up on that. Yeah.
yeah, but yeah, interesting.
So why was that
Yeah,
vet there at the wedding anyway? Did they establish that, or did he just show up for a drink?
I don't think they do establish it. Again, having some context of like a similar town in Pennsylvania, it might just be that the town's small enough that like if whenever there's like a wedding or something like that, like there's not even like invitations that go out. It's just like this is a thing
Hey,
that's
show up.
happening. Yeah, I mean, seriously, when my grandparents renewed their vows for their 50th, like in that Pennsylvania town, they held it at like a firehouse. Like that's like where the like reception was, and like legit everybody in it's that small of a town. It's a one
Oh,
traffic light town, like just showed up, like, and that was just kind of, I'm sure there were some strangers there and there, but like there wasn't a high enough concentration of them like for anyone to really like notice or care probably.
So more importantly, did anyone get to use the fire pole?
I'm not sure. Not that I saw, but yeah. I'm sure. I mean, again, like I would say like the similarities are pretty striking in a lot of ways. Like I wouldn't be surprised if somebody did.
And then
Um,
went streaking, and then yeah,
that's very possible as well. Yeah.
nice.
Absolutely. Yeah. Well, anything anybody wants to add about the ending of Deer Hunter, or like the Deer Hunter in general? Anything that was like that struck you about the movies, or particular standout scenes? It's okay if this is like a bit of a shorter one. I think kind of like doing the scene analysis, like this kind of lends itself to being a bit more like truncated, I think. So
I do have a quick question. So in terms of authenticity, was the hype over doing the Russian roulette, and I read a little bit beforehand, so I could be wrong about this, but wasn't that supposed to be like overly, like that wasn't really a big thing? Like there.
what I gleaned is that like it's something that was maybe he heard like a story about it and then kind of took that and like just presented it as something like that like happened. I
Mhm.
think like where I more or less landed on it is like it's an interesting plot device, kind of sets it apart in that regard, but I don't think that's something that was very like common, you know what I mean? Like culturally, I'm not sure, like outside of like the war, but like I don't think that that was a very common thing. You heard a lot about a lot of other stuff that's was common as far as like, you know, like POW stories, bamboo shoots and whatnot, things like that. That stuff I know
Yeah.
is all like pretty well documented, but this I think like it's pretty much been debunked as like maybe it did happen like once or twice here or there, but yeah. I
So
think a
in
lot of the
terms of like, oh, sorry, go ahead.
no, you're fine. I was just gonna say I think a lot of the stuff that like the portrayals of like that's one of the biggest criticisms at the time, and still like it's a very one-dimensional look at like the Vietnamese like people.
Mhm.
Um I don't think it's really meant. I think you're meant to pretty much stay with these characters and kind of what they see and experience is like their takeaways, which kind of has to be yours as like the audience, I guess, you know, like I think
Mhm.
it's less about trying to see both sides of it and more just like, hey, this is what these people go through and this is what they've taken back with them, right? Sort of
Okay.
like the cruelty of this place. But yeah.
Is that like both in terms of like the actual like torture being used as torture if you were captured, or was this also in the sense of like this is like an underground game ring that we do for fun and money and
Yeah.
betting outside of torture?
I can't speak, like I said, I can't speak to I know that as far as like the POW stuff, like it's not something
Mhm.
that was very common. I
Mhm.
can't imagine like culturally it would be a common thing either. But again, I don't know like enough to
Yeah.
say like for sure no. It seems like
Okay.
something that again that's more of a plot device than anything else, like to kind
Yeah.
of give it an otherworldly like weird, you know, quality. Just and
Yeah.
again, like I know interesting is not the best word, but like unique thing to kind of toss in there to kind of, you know, drive the plot for. I mean, it's effective, right? Like I think in both the POW scenes and sort of like where Nick ends up. But yeah, I don't
That's
buy it
definitely
as like
true. Because that like that to me was like the most stressful part of the film was a when they were all in the hut together and how were they going to get out, and then when that became like the thing to do at the very end, I'm like, okay, so who's going to bite it, you know? But even before that, when they go on the second hunting trip, and I'm like, all right, so Michael's back and he's going through his stuff. And I'm like, Stan always talks about, or everybody jokes about Stan always having that little gun that he carries around with him. And I'm just like, oh, geez, somebody's going to shoot somebody. And then when Michael like has that moment where he kind of almost loses it, you know, and it's like, this was, and I thought that was where it was going to go. And then it thankfully didn't go where I thought it was going to go after that. But
it could have though. There was a
yeah.
there's a live round in there, and I don't think he
Hmm.
checked to see if it was. I think he kind of just in a moment of sort of anger and
Yeah.
wanting to maybe rub somebody's face and like what he's been through, just pulls the
Yeah.
trigger and hopes for the bets. You know,
Yeah, man.
that's a really tough scene. I mean, there's a lot of tough scenes in that, but yeah, that's hard because again, John Cazale great at being pathetic, you know, and like he's not intentionally trying to stir up, you know, the PTSD. Like he has no context. It's not like De Niro's like sat there and told them what he's been through.
Hmm.
And you know, he sort of almost punished, like, you know, pays for it with his life, you know, some insensitivity. Yeah.
Yeah, just like a little bit of interesting history on the roulette thing. During the Academy like awards, 13 members of the like Vietnam Veterans Against the War group like protested how inaccurate the scene in the movies were. And they definitely came under fire for being kind of like racist in their depictions of the Vietnamese. So like that's all important to consider. It definitely does read to me as more of a metaphorical plot device.
Yes.
But because it is a movie that tries to like strive for authenticity, I do think that gets kind of murky, you know? Um,
Sure.
but like yeah, as a plot device, it does feel like the whole way the film is structured kind of mirrors the game. If you think about the scene where Michael's insisting that they need 3 bullets, you can also think about their friend group and the fact that it was the 3 of them out of the 6 people in their friend group that, you know, got randomly, you know, chosen to go over there, right?
So
Mm.
were they
Um,
drafted or did they volunteer? Like, because that's something that like I wasn't clear on. I thought it was like that they had volunteered, or like that you're supposed to assume that they had volunteered, but I could be completely like wrong on that. I'm curious of
I
what you're taking,
don't
because I think what you're
know.
saying is more interesting if they were, you know, drafted, but versus volunteering as far as like, you know, the symbolism of the 3 bullets. But I'm sorry to cut you off. Go ahead.
I don't know. To me, the film didn't say one way or the other, so I'm
Yeah,
choosing to interpret they
I love it.
got drafted, especially since one of them had their wedding right beforehand, and like maybe that was just poor planning, could be, but yeah, I don't know. It just like it definitely feels like a theme that like comes up through how the actual movie itself is structured. But yeah, interesting choice. Doesn't necessarily work, I think, exactly as they intended. And is definitely problematic in some ways.
Yeah, I mean, I totally understand the criticisms around sort of the portrayal like of the Vietnamese people. I think like all that stuff's super valid. Again, like intention wise, like I don't really know if the intent was to try to be like, to have any sort of context. Like I think really like director seems to want you to be like I said, firmly like in the seat of these characters, and the Russian roulette's kind of supposed to be a way of like, well, this is your perception would be that these are like cruel, terrible people if like that if that was your primary experience, right? And then I think like kind of having the echoes of that being like the civilian parts of the country is just a convenient plot device, a way of basically like showing somebody running back towards like probably the most scared and horrified they've been in their life, as a way of coping, ironically, like with that, like to like re-experience it over and over again, which is
I do think
interesting.
it's interesting they have that like rich capitalists of unknown origin who's actually running the Russian roulette underground.
It's implied I think he's supposed to be like a holdover from the French occupation of
Yeah.
Vietnam, like the French colonials. Yeah, that's definitely an interesting choice. Before we move on, I guess I could ask, like, why do you think Nick goes like, why cope that way? Do you think like he wants to die and like he knows like it's just like a way, like a profitable way to commit suicide? Is it just like some sort of cognitive break? Like what do you think that's all about?
I don't think there's logic to it. I mean, he's clearly mentally not healthy,
No,
right?
yeah.
Especially when Michael actually comes up to him and sees him, and he goes into kind of a daze when he's asked about his family and stuff. So I think he's definitely dealing with a lot of trauma and like some psychiatric issues likely. And it's hard to say when you're in that kind of a headspace what becomes logical and illogical. Um, it didn't make perfect sense to me, but it also is like it's one of those times where it seems like the thing happened less because it was true to the character, more just because it was necessary for the plot.
Yeah. Um yeah, it's I grapple I had a hard time grappling with like the motivations there, and I think I settled kind of on what you said, where it's just like he's not well, especially where you see him at the end, like it's almost like something that's just become sort of routine. Like he seems just vaguely human, um like his interactions, you know what I mean? Like he seems to very much be going through the motions, but then part of me is like he's sending the money back specifically to Stevie, so like there is a part of him that still um remembers and recognizes like home and is like trying to do that. I think it's like his way of like maybe trying to make up for the fact that Stevie's like physically maimed, and like
I have to
maybe he
ask how
sees.
he knows that though, right? Because like I
Yeah,
don't think he's seen Stevie since they all got separated.
yeah. Oh, that's right. Yeah, because like he sees him drop out of the helicopter, but he doesn't even know that he broke his legs. I mean, that's something like De
Yeah.
Niro gets him back like separately, right, from that. So yeah, it's a good question. I don't know. I don't know. Yeah. Interesting. Uh, any final thoughts to add, Will?
Unless maybe it's somehow like a competition thing between him and Michael. Like we always got the sense there was a little competition there, knowingly, like known competition, I guess, that Nick picks up on from Linda and Michael together beforehand. I can't remember what they said when they had their heart to heart when Michael's is naked and has a blanket that Nick gives to him, and they have a little chat about, like sticking it out together, and how Michael really cares about Nick is like his best friend, right? Like he
Hmm.
wants Nick to be there more than anybody when he goes hunting. And so I don't know, maybe there's just a little bit of like competition there between the two that just gets exacerbated by the torture sequence when they're both like, all right, it's one of the or it feels like it's one of the other, and not really sure what how Michael's plan is actually going to work out in the heat of the moment, and just feeling like it was easier to detach from everything else after that, and that was just sort of where he went. Or yeah, yeah, that's the most I can try and glean from that. But it did seem very strange that it was like something just snapped in Nick's brain, and he was like, this is where I'm going to go now. This is the path I'm going to choose.
You did jog one thing loose. It is implied that Nick might be the actual father of the character that's pregnant, the bride, Stevie's wife.
Oh,
So you could
yeah.
interpret the money as like, like he's taking ownership in some way of like, his
Gotcha.
child. Again, it's not confirmed, but it's heavily implied that like that because we know it's not Stevie's, like I never did it with her, like so he's basically trying to spare her shame, presumably by marrying her. But yeah,
it's true, because doesn't Nick say something to Stevie about like, it's okay, don't worry about it? Like it's I guess it was sort of the extent of, don't worry about it, she'll take care of it, it's her problem. Like it was like, yeah, great, thanks, Nick. You're upstart kind of guy going off to war.
that brings us back to your original complaint of like not a lot of like nice people in the friend group. Yeah.
I did think it was interesting. I didn't see the typical Christopher Walken speech pattern in on display in this, so I wasn't sure if that was like something that he affected later in his acting career, or if that was just sort of like, I don't know, did that just not show itself in this cut of the film? I haven't seen so much of young Christopher Walken to really know what to compare that to. I just know of all the what everybody likes to joke and like make fun of that. That I thought watching that was something that stood out to me. I thought, oh, it's not the cadence that I expected from his speech.
Yeah, I know he's persona non grata with good reason, but in Woody Allen's Annie Hall, there's a great scene where Christopher Walken is like, I think he's sitting on a bed, and Woody Allen wanders in and he's like, what are you doing, bud? And like he launches into this speech about like this strong desire that he feels sometimes to like just like jerk the steering wheel of his car like into another like oncoming like car.
Alvy.
Hi, Dwayne. How's it going?
This is my room.
Oh, yeah? It's terrific.
Can I confess something? I tell you this because, as an artist, I think you'll understand. Sometimes when I'm driving on the road at night, I see two headlights coming toward me. Fast, I have this sudden impulse to turn the wheel quickly, head on into the oncoming car. I can anticipate the explosion, the sound of shattering glass, the flames rising out of the flowing gasoline.
Right. Well, I have to go now, Dwayne, because I'm due back on the planet Earth.
And there's actually, I think, like a French word for that, but like that means like the call of the void or something like that. But like he very much has the speech pattern there, like where like it's a little bit more noticeable. I don't know, like I'd have to like go back and kind of watch, like, and of course maybe like with age and like as it became a thing people talked about more, maybe like it got more pronounced, who knows. Like Jeff Goldblum has admitted that like his Goldblum isms it is very much an affectation at this point, because it's something that's like impossible to escape. People do impressions all the time, and he's kind of just embraced it. So
okay,
but
yes,
the Flandersization or whatever you call it.
yeah, exactly. But yeah, let's play some Pitch Storm, shall we?
Let's do it.
Always ready.
Yeah, in the interest of time, you want to just keep it to like to one round like today?
We can do it, and that'll be super easy.
Well, yeah,
I think.
All or
So I
nothing,
also want
baby.
to throw out a big thank you again, as always, to Ben Kepner for allowing us to borrow / promote his game Pitchstorm, as it has been both entertaining and enlightening as to what films either of you would come up with if you had substantial capital with which to do it.
In just 60 seconds. Let's add that. Very
Yep.
important caveat there.
That is true. All right, so Chris, how about we have you go first this time since you chose the movie?
Roger. This time I'm going to say I want choice over a character. So you can give me a plot and I'll choose from a selection of characters.
So your character options are a dog just trying to rescue his boy, a clumsy but lovable waitress, a young superhero just discovering their powers.
I am gonna do the dog trying to rescue his boy.
A dog just trying to rescue his boy battles addiction to prescription drugs.
Oh my god.
No.
All right. So we are going to have a classic Homeward Bound like voice acting kind of thing. And in the part of the dog, we're going to cast Angelica Houston. I don't know why, just first name that came to my mind. Anyway, Angelica Houston, the dog, is hooked on prescription drugs, which is a big problem because her master is down at the bottom of a well. And she's not really real interested in rescuing the boy. So she realizes that she's going to have to quit cold turkey in order to get her drugged out dog butt off of the couch.
That's all right. All right. We love it. We love it. But what if, hear me out, we actually split this movie into 3 movies?
Oh, Christ.
What would
All
part
right.
2 look like?
All right, so this movie is going to take place in real time, which means that like you got to watch Angelica Houston the dog get real sick and struggle for like a good hour and a half. Then part 2 is going to be she runs to find help, and part 3 is going to be she actually ends up rescuing the boy and kicking the drug habit. So
solid
rescue. Man, that's tough, dude. Oh man.
Excellent. I love the real time thing. I got 24 vibes from that. Like bing, bing.
Yeah,
bing.
the little clock.
Yeah.
I got Deerwalker vibes.
Oh yeah. We're gonna include a wedding at the beginning. It's gonna go for about an hour. Just saying.
Yeah.
Noise.
Oh, not my best work, buddy. That's tough.
Hey, it's all right. Can't be perfect every time.
No.
All right, May.
I would like the
plot?
same deal. Give me some character options.
Your character options are the world's most adorable kitten,
Okay.
a crocodile hunter who knows nothing about the big city, or an astronomer that thinks they've made contact with aliens. Oh, that's too good to be true right there. I'm getting some vibes from
give
previous
me the astronomer.
Noise. Okay.
Yeah.
This is excellent. Okay. An astronomer that thinks they've made contact with aliens incites a rebellion in an oppressed insane asylum.
Yes.
Okay, so opening scene. You see a wide desert plain, stars above, and a Ford Bronco comes speeding into the scene, driven by none other than Jodie Foster. Jodie is just going racing down this dirt road with like a dozen police cars following her, and you see from the sky above a shining light begin to descend, coming down right on top of an asylum that Jodie is racing towards to prevent this.
Okay, all right. How about let's add a crazy helicopter chase right at the start of the movie?
Did I say Ford Bronco? I meant helicopter. Racing through the desert, piloted by Jodie Foster, heading towards this mental hospital where her son John is residing, and she is there to stop the aliens from stealing John, because John is the only one that can fight them in the great galactic war to come.
Nice.
Love
That's
it.
all I got.
Solid. All right. Look, May, with what you had to work with on that, I think I gotta give it to you on that one. I mean, like
I would
that,
give it to May
hands
too.
down,
Absolutely. Yeah.
that was dope. So
Thank you.
I'm just gonna, yep,
Amazing. Well done.
yep.
Oh God.
Excellent. Well, thank you both for humoring me with a round of that, and also for humoring our listeners.
Absolutely. Hopefully you got some chuckles out of those insane movie plots as always. Well,
Now I want to like see what a Bronco helicopter would look like.
a Ford Bronco helicopter. My
Transformer.
first thought is probably bulky. Like that's
Yeah.
Extended cab.
Tan and white, hopefully as well. Like, which is why when I think of Broncos, like that color scheme always comes into mind. But yeah,
I always think of the kind of like pastel-y blue.
really,
Yeah.
I mean, that's certainly a prettier color than what I just what I just said. But well, sweet. Let's go ahead and draw us a main quest and skedaddle.
I think that's
Sumter
a
is
second
ready.
from the
Yeah.
That was your timer.
Yep, that was. He was like, "Get on with it, fool." All right, and a shuffle we go. And it is a bullet time. Let's see if I managed to dodge this bullet time here.
Do it,
Let's
Neo.
see. All right. It is a Will Rotondi pick.
What?
The film is The Gift. And
Oh, yes.
yeah, so we'll be analyzing a specific scene in The Gift. Do you want to set us up, or shall we wait until next episode? Oh yeah, Annie's vision of Jessica at school is what we have listed here in our doc. So I'm excited because I've never seen this. This is based on the Lewis Lowry book. Is that right?
That is so I think you're thinking of The Giver. Is that right?
Oh yeah, right. So what is The Gift?
So The Gift is a film. It's a Sam Raimi, like it's got Cate Blanchett, who I love, who plays a woman who does tarot reading as her job. It's set in the South. It feels like you were in the South. It's about her getting these visions that help her tell people what how she guides people on what choices they should and shouldn't make, and what their future holds based on that. And then one of the people that she advises ends up dead. And so, or one of the people that she's connected to ends up dead. And so there's suspicion about what's going on with that, and what she knows, and how it all ties together in this kind of twisty sort of gothic horror. There we go. Jeez. It's a gothic, southern gothic horror, Sam Raimi
I like
style.
that genre.
Yeah, with like
well,
the
you said Sam Raimi, and I'm like, say no more. Like I'm in.
Yeah, with like the typical sort of jump scary sort of like look, like that's very typical of his work. Like you watch it and you think, yeah, that's like there, you might be waiting a little bit for it, and then you see it and you're like, okay, yeah, this is Sam Raimi, with sort of the style of what they use and the effects that they use in it. So yeah, it was great.
Well, I'm looking forward to it. It seems like it'll be I mean, like everything you've used to describe it, it sounds like my kind of film on paper anyway. So looking forward to it.
Excellent. I do want to do a little minor plug-in to anybody who wants another good recommendation for a podcast that I listened to recently.
Sure.
If I could throw that out there. If not, it's cool. If there's
by all means, man. Absolutely.
But for those who might need a little bit more happiness in their life, I know that Ted Lasso has been a big source of, feel-good optimism these days. And the guy who plays Roy Kent in it has a podcast called Films to be Buried With that I recently started listening to, and I have really enjoyed it. So if either of you need another recommendation, if our viewers need listeners, I should say, / potential YouTube viewers would like a recommendation, I wholeheartedly we'd throw that out there. So
It's very cool. I think his name's Brett Goldstein or something like that, right? Is that
correct?
Right?
Yep. Brett Goldstein and his films to be buried with.
Well, that brings us to the end of another episode. We appreciate you sticking through. As always, please give us a like, share, and subscribe, especially that share part. Again, I say it every week, but it's true every week. It's really the best way to help us grow the show. It means a lot to us when you do that. So throw it out, Facebook, Twitter, if you like the show. Let other people know. We really do appreciate that. And until next week, we love you. Bye.
Bye,
Bye.
guys.